One of the most important discussions that we can have as leaders is the career development discussion. Very, very important. So today we're talking about how to conduct a career development discussion. So important when it comes to people stewardship, people steward leadership, taking ownership and stewardship of the people that are working with us, our teams. It is so important that we sit down and have the discussions. Because here's the question: how often did your team leader, how often did your manager sit down with you and have an annual, a quarterly, twice a year? How often did they sit down and have that career development discussion with you? If it's like a lot of the leaders I had, almost never. There were very few leaders that I ever had that sat down with me and said, hey, it's time. Let's set some goals. Let's see where we're at. And let's see what we need to do to get you to the next level, to get you to where you need to be. Because they just don't have a lot of time. But as people stewards, as leaders, as true leaders, we don't have a choice. This is our role. This is our job, is to develop people. And the career development discussion is one of the best. Now, again, I talked about this reference book before, but The Coaching Effect, it's fantastic. I think you should get it, read it, study it, learn it. Because when it comes to communicating with your team members, it has fantastic ideas in there on how to effectively do a lot of those things. So this career development discussion is in that book. But again, with the hundreds of people that I've worked with, I've had an awful lot of career development discussions because my managers didn't do it with me. I did it with my folks. All right. So here we go. What do we start with? First of all, we've got to prepare. How often are you going to have them? Make a decision. Whether you're going to do it once a year, twice a year, I recommend at least twice a year that you do it, where we go through the entire process of setting goals with these folks. All right. Number 2, prepare your questions in advance. What questions do you want to ask your team member and have answers already readily available that they send you in advance? They answer the questions in advance. They send them back to you in advance so that we can ask a lot of clarifying questions while we're in the meeting. It'll save a lot of time that way. And then along with that, we want to make sure that we find out how is it that they like to be recognized. Because when they hit these goals, how are we going to recognize them for hitting them? Some people love the plaque in public, right? They want to be called out. They want the high five. They want everybody to give a standing ovation. And then you have others that are like, no, just acknowledge it. Just acknowledge me in the corner over there and I'll be good. I don't need the limelight. I don't want to be out in front of everybody. And then you have others who are like, I don't care about any of that. Just give me a gift card or something, write me a card, give me a gift card or just even a handwritten note would be good for them, right? So let's find out how they like to be recognized. And then what do they think are their greatest strengths? We've got to find out where they feel they are strong. And once we figure out where they feel they're strong, we can also start, okay, they think they're strong here, but maybe they're not as strong as they think they are. Now we can ask some clarifying questions and we can teach and train and coach and those types of things. And then we sit down and we go through what are their personal goals. Their personal goals. We're not talking about the goals at work. We're talking about their personal goals. What are they working on at home? Do they have a side hustle? Yeah, we talked about this before. What maybe they're trying to save their marriage right now. What are some of the goals that they're working on that we might be able to own, right? We might be able to give them some resources to look into. You may have read a few books that they haven't read. You may have listened to some podcasts that they need to be aware of that can really help them tweak the way they think a little bit and help their marriage if that's what they're struggling with. Because it's really hard to focus and be connected at work if we're not right at home. It becomes very, very difficult to do that. All right. So we also want to coach them to their unique needs. What are their needs? What do they need? And how can we help them? How can we coach them? How can we move them forward in that role? Now, second step. So once we know their overall needs, now we can move on to what are their current role goals. So the role that they're currently in, the position they're currently working in, what are their several people that work with them on their team, right? And what are their department goals? Do they have sales goals? Do they have customer service expectations? What are the expectations that they are working towards? Now, how well do they perform at their current role? because there may be some skills that they're lacking that would take them to the next level in their current role of development. Now, also, we want to find out what is it that is lighting them up in their current role. What sets them on fire? What do they really like about what they do? What do they like about their job? What do they like about working for the company that we're working with at this time, right? It becomes very important to find those things out, because what if they don't like it? What if they're not performing well and they really hate their job? They like the company, but they don't like what they're currently doing. Well, now we can talk about maybe there are other roles that match their personality, that match their skill set, that we could shift them around in the company to where they would excel, where they're not doing quite as well as they could where they currently are, right? All right, step number 3. What are their potential future roles? Now, we know a lot of people, they want to move up, but there are also just as many people that don't ever want to move up. They want to get better in their current role, but they would never want to be in a leadership role. They just don't want to do it, right? Just the mere thought of going into a role makes them want to throw up, right? And we get this. So when it comes to that, we want to make sure that we find out exactly what their desire is. Where do they want to go? How far do they want to go? Do they want to be the CEO of the company one day? Or do they really just think that if I get better at my current role, I'll be fulfilled right here where I'm at? So we want to be able to set goals and help them set goals for themselves as to exactly what they need to do to improve in those areas. So how do we do that? So we've sent the questions in advance, answered the questions in advance. Now we are going to go through and ask them clarifying questions about what it is that they wanted to do, right? So let's say they decided, hey, I want to improve my public speaking. I'm not very confident. I know that public speaking is the number one way to boost the confidence level of people. So I want to work on that. Perfect. Now, what can I do as a leader to facilitate their growth in that area? Number one, the next time I have a training meeting, I can give them a speaking part. The next time the company, let's say we've got a task force going on doing something very specific, make them the leader of it. They're going to have to talk to the group constantly, right? We want to look for ways to light a fire under them, to take them into that area of uncomfortableness so that they grow. Nobody ever grows in a state of comfort. We only grow in the state of uncomfortableness, right? When we're uncomfortable. So let's move them into that direction. We push them into a state of uncomfortable so that they can grow more effectively. And does that mean that we just throw their feet in the fire and the next corporate retreat or the next corporate meeting we have, they have to give the keynote presentation? No, we're not trying to kill people, right? We're not trying to have them pass out on us, but we want to incrementally help them improve, right? So once we have done all this, we want to make sure with what we feel their development path is and what they've decided their development path is. Some of the pitfalls that could happen. What are some of the problems that we could encounter in developing this particular skill? So maybe it's, oh my gosh, I'm so filled with anxiety and fear that I just can't. How am I supposed to talk? I'm just too afraid. Okay, well, how would our best self overcome that? Well, I would take some extra training. I might read a book. I might listen to a podcast. I might listen to some speakers who are helping me overcome my fear and do some of the techniques and follow some of the advice that they give on managing or mitigating that fear, that anxiety, right? Because it's not really fear. There's no lion, tiger, or bear trying to kill you. It's a perceived fear of something that has not even happened in the future yet, right? So as we mitigate that fear, then we're able to push forward. So how will we help them overcome the pitfalls that they could face? All right. And we actually go through those on the front side before we walk out of the meeting, because we also want to make sure that we ask them, how can I best help you achieve these goals? What can I do for you? How do you want me to hold you accountable to this? How do you want me to follow up to this? And remember, if you're doing your bi-weekly one-to-one meetings, perfect opportunity to follow up as to the action steps that they're taking on a daily basis to achieve these goals. Now, what do we want to boil it down to? We want to boil it down to your top 3 priorities. Top 3, 1 to 3, 1 to 3, no more than 3, because you can only focus on one thing at a time. But I could do one thing in Q1, I could focus on something else in Q2, and I could focus on something else in Q3. And I can bring them all together in Q4, right? So let's focus on 1 to 3 things max. All right. Okay. This is a performance discussion. That's it, right? Career development discussion becomes very, very important. So we prepare. How often are we going to meet? Questions on the front side. Number 2, know your overall goals and needs. Number 3, what are the current goals for the current role? And then what are your potential future roles going to be? It becomes very important. Hey, if you like this stuff, like it, subscribe to it, and it will announce every time we go live. I'm going to do this every single day. It starts having them. We've got to actually have them. Appreciate you guys for watching.